Welcome to SKNIS Perspectives, an interactive program of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, aired weekly on this radio station.
You must get tested. When you're tested, you're empowered, and when you're empowered, you can live.
How much do you know about breast cancer? Are you at risk? If you're not, you probably know someone who is. Today we'll tell you about an opportunity for locals to interact with and get tested by doctors from the United States. I'm Joel Cranston, your host for today's edition of Perspectives. Hello, Ian Richards is off this week. Natalie Williams, the chairwoman of the Breast Cancer Foundation based in Washington, D.C. in the United States, recently visited St. Kitts and Nevis as part of her mission to increase breast cancer awareness and encourage women of color to get tested. Her case is a strong one, as statistics from the U.S. Center for Disease Control revealed that African Americans are more likely to die from breast cancer than any other ethnic group. While here, Miss Williams, who herself is a breast cancer survivor, sat down with Ian Richards and shared her story, as well as her plans to help persons living here.
Natalie Williams, welcome to St. Kitts and Nevis, and of course welcome to St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service Studios. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So tell us, what brings you to St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, I have a foundation that's called the Natalie Williams Breast Care Foundation, and I was invited by a doctor who is a native of St. Kitts, Nevis, to spread awareness about breast cancer and the importance of early detection.
Can you tell us a bit about the doctor and how you met him?
Back in home, Washington, D.C., I work as the corporate secretary to the board of directors at United Medical Center. And as part of that role, I have a very close relationship with many of the doctors that are staffed there. And Dr. Gilbert Daniel, who's a primary care physician there at the hospital, just in mere conversation with him, I shared with him my experience with breast cancer and my recent development of nonprofit 501c3, and he immediately said to me, this is something that could be beneficial to his residents and family and friends back here, St. Kitts and Nevis.
And did you know about St. Kitts and Nevis before? Have you heard about it?
I had heard about it. I've traveled quite a bit in my day. I have never been here before, but I've certainly heard that it's one of the most beautiful islands around, and so we're having an opportunity to experience that while we're here. But have since done a bit of research about it and met some prominent individuals here on the island, and I think it's great. I think it will be a great partnership for us moving forward.
Right, and we want to discuss that a bit more, but first, let's find out a bit more about you. Tell us, who is Natalie Williams, essentially?
Well, today I'm a breast cancer survivor. I'm a mother of one. I have a 12-year-old daughter. I am heavily involved in local politics in Washington, D.C., ran for city council most recently. Did not win the seat, but certainly won a lot of experience and connections. I run a profit public relations firm, which initially is how I even got into politics. My PR firm represents the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, and we have over the past, about 8-9 years now. And this group is made up of state legislators, African American state legislators from all across the United States. And so it's through this organization that we support and take positions on the agendas by our federal government, and really try to spread the word about advocacy and activism for folks right in your local states. And so I work very closely with the headquarters, which is located in Washington, D.C., and it's been quite an experience, and that's what brought me sort of face-to-face with politics. Prior to that, though, I worked as a news journalist, and it was through that experience that I really began to understand the needs of the people, going around telling their stories, really trying to just tell the story of what an everyday person's experiences are. And so that, coupled with in my experience with the National Black Caucus, which allowed me to force me to take a look at how do we address issues that are affecting the people. And, a lot of times it's through politics. And so I began to work with one candidate here, another administration there, and I soon became the go-to communications expert for elected officials in Washington, D.C.
So you mentioned that you're a breast cancer survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care to tell us a bit more about your experience when you found out? How old were you?
Yeah,
essentially?
I found out I was actually running for office at the time and had scheduled 2 different appointments to get a mammogram done.
What year was that?
Well, it was last year, so I'm a recent breast cancer survivor. I was a no-show on my first appointment to the doctor, and the second appointment I called to cancel. And my mom actually came to town and reminded me that at the age of 40, you're supposed to have your first mammogram. And so I believe it was just an attempt on my part to kind of silence my mother because she had just been, on me so much about, getting a mammogram. So when she came to town, I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to get this mammogram so I don't have to hear anything else about a mammogram. And I waited about 2 weeks later and got a notice in the mail that said that it was abnormal. So then I was a bit concerned by that. Folks around me said, oh, don't worry about it. Notices go out like that all the time. And so I did a follow-up appointment, and within about a 2-week period, I had every test that you could possibly think of for to detect, whether or not it was a cancerous tumor. And so once it was detected that it was in fact a cancerous tumor in my left breast, then it was up to my doctors at George Washington University to tell me what the best route was for me to actually treat this. And so I settled in on having a double mastectomy, followed by reconstruction. That was October 2nd of last year. In January of this year, I underwent chemotherapy, which was a 4 to 6 week ordeal, and then I underwent radiation, which was for 6 weeks every day.
So what ran through your mind when you found out that it actually was a problem and when the doctors gave you the news?
Yeah, I was in disbelief. Because, and I actually called my mother and I said, the doctor says that I have breast cancer. And she said, why did he say that? And, that goes to show you that, in my family, I did not have a history.
No history at all.
No history at all of breast cancer. So it was, my response to it was one thing, but it was also echoed by my mother's response, like, why did he say that, to you? And I said, well, I'm not sure how, I'm the one to get it. I would imagine, stress and eating, poor eating habits prior to that. But, I was devastated when I got the news. I actually went to my doctor's office on the train. So in D.C. we have a subway system.
Yeah.
And so I went on the train, and I can't even tell you how I got home that day. I came back on the train, I do know that, but everything was very much...
So it was all a blur.
All a blur. I did, ironically, see shades of pink that day. And the color pink is symbolic of breast cancer awareness. So, when I think about that, I think how devastated I was by the news, but immediately I knew that there was a sense of call to action even beyond myself. And I think those shades of pink initially really helped set the tone for what I'm doing today.
Right. Your past as a news reporter, did you work with anyone on breast cancer? Did you have any sort of familiarity with the topic?
I did not. Well, I will say this, at WUSA Channel 9 in D.C., we, and I say we because I formerly worked there, had a breast cancer buddy system. So it's like buddy check. On the 9th day of every month, you should call, someone and remind them to have their mammograms done. So I was aware of that, but I did not play an intricate part in that. And so, again, no one in my family ever had it. I participated maybe twice in what was called the Susan G. Komen walk, which is very popular in the States.
And that's for breast cancer.
That's for breast cancer. And but beyond that, no.
And so how would you say it impacted your life and also your lifestyle?
Yeah. So in terms of my lifestyle, today I eat differently. I exercise. I try to stay away from sodas. It's difficult though. It's difficult. And so every day is a challenge, and you wake up thinking, if I'm going to live, then these are the things that I have to do. I never before was so confined to medicines or anything like that. So every day I have to remind myself that I have to take tamoxifen every day. And, you know, there have been some days that I've just forgotten, just in the hustle and bustle of things. But a dear friend of mine said to me, kind of in anger, he said, every morning you wake up before you go to work, you take the time out, 20 minutes, to get all dressed up and put your makeup on, and you never leave the house without your makeup, right?
Right.
And I go, right? They go, well, if you want to live, then I need you to also put your medicine right there and make sure that that is something that you do every day. And so I'm reminded of that every day. And so I keep medicine at home. And then just if I forget at home, then right beside my desk, I keep another stash of medicine.
For the benefit of those who may not be aware, a double mastectomy includes the removal of both breasts.
Yes.
Was that a difficult decision, being that, you know, women and the emotions associated with it?
I struggled with it all of about 5 minutes, to be honest with you. The thought of having to revisit this again. So I thought, you know, if it could happen to one breast, then certainly there's a possibility of it occurring in another. And so to reduce that, when I was told that that was an option, all 5 minutes, I said, this is what I need to do. Now, certainly, you know, I started wondering, you know, well, what do I do beyond that? And technology is so great. You know, I literally was able to kind of look up on a wall and go, these are the new breasts that that I'd like to have. And so in that regard, it hasn't been such a bad deal.
If the possibility didn't exist for reconstruction, do you think that it would have affected you? Because I imagine that there are some persons who may not be able to afford that type of procedure.
Yeah. You know, I don't know this for certain, but most insurances in the United States call for the reconstruction side of it. So, you know, if you're doing a double mastectomy, then there are provisions for the reconstruction to actually happen. But there was a time, you know, in history that, you know, women with breast cancer, they just, you know, got their breasts removed, and they had to, you know, deal with the cosmetics of that. And I can honestly say I'm certain that that would be something that would have been more traumatic, the thought of not returning to a normal state. But anything to save a life.
Yeah. Angelina Jolie, of course, a U.S. film star, well-known UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador as well, too. She also had a double mastectomy, and I think it was more preventative.
Yes.
Do you think the attention and the type of coverage that the event got, it sort of helped or hurt the issues related to breast cancer awareness? Because there were some persons who suggested that the motives of doing that may not have been as genuine as she was concerned about her health.
I didn't question her motives, primarily because she spoke of the history of breast cancer in her family.
Right.
And I think that in the United States, celebrity is such a huge ordeal. You know, when you have celebrities who are taking, you know, actions or, you know, preventive steps, I think it was a good thing. I think for her to step out and say that this is what I'm doing, I don't have it as we speak, but I know the concerns or the history of my family. I think it raised awareness quite a bit among Caucasian women, African American women, you name it.
Right. And so you're here in St. Kitts and Nevis as we tape. It actually is the 7th of August. You referred earlier in terms of your involvement with Dr. Gilbert, in terms of getting involved with St. Kitts and Nevis. So tell us, what exactly have you been involved with while here, and what are the plans to work in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of the foundation?
Well, we're actually in talks now. And so the idea is for the Natalie Williams Breast Care Foundation and its doctors. So we're comprised of a team of advisory doctors, as well as a full board of directors. And these doctors also do mammograms, ultrasounds, primary care physicians. And so the idea is that we would actually travel with our mammography machine, because in the United States we know that we have state-of-the-art technology, and so there are other different countries and different islands that may not have the same type of access that we have. And so we'll be traveling with this mammography machine. The idea is to be here over a period of 10 days to be able to do a heavy level of promotion about the need for early detection, and really serve as an example of my life that, I was able to discover cancer. It was stage 2, but it was still considered early detection. And so I just want to spread that message. It's important that my sisters understand that you've got to get tested early. We are a race of people that are diagnosed at lower rates than Caucasians, but yet we die at greater rates.
And when you say we, you're talking about those who are descended from Africans?
Africa, that's right. That's right. And why is that? That's because, access to health care, just being simply unaware, uninformed. And so if my life has been spared, I believe it's my responsibility to help save another life.
And so your foundation typically targets the minorities?
It targets women of color, specifically, because we don't see that quite often. Most of the efforts and foundations that get national exposure really target Caucasian women.
Right.
They welcome women of African descent or women of color. However, I believe that the message is not targeted appropriately so that these women would actually see the need to come out. And so I'm going to step in that role there and try to target specifically to women of color.
You mentioned that you're hoping to spend about 10 days. I understand, of course, that it's in initial discussions, but have you had a chance to identify maybe some dates when that will be done? And
No, not yet.
Okay.
We do know that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month,
Right.
but October is right around the corner, and I certainly don't want to rush this effort. And so, I was just telling Dr. Daniel that, I would like to see us really plan this, and so that it can be effective, so that we can have hundreds of women come out and be tested. And so if that means, 2 months beyond the national awareness of breast cancer, I'm fine with that.
so initially, what would you like to see happen here? You mentioned that a team of doctors and the mammography machine. So is that what is essentially going to be taking place here?
When we
Yeah,
return?
when you visit, yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The idea is to come in, again, do a heavy level of promotion so that the island is well aware of what's happening, and for us to have a centrally located facility where folks are familiar with and can actually come out and participate in this, and really try to do follow-ups beyond that. So, we don't want to just come in and do testing and then leave. We want to be able to say, okay, if you got tested this year, then we'll be back next year. And so this is an annual testing for you. Now, certainly we know that there will be some women who will test positive for it, and we want to be able to embrace them as well and make sure that they get the treatment that they need in other respective areas.
So you'll be providing some sort of support, whether it be it's some link that would have established your online, of course the technology is there.
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned that you're based in Washington, D.C. I know that the ambassador is very active. Have you had any engagement with the embassy there of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Yeah, we introduced the idea to Ambassador Henry Martin, and she embraced it wholeheartedly, hence me being here today. But I think she saw the need for this partnership, and she saw how it could benefit her family and friends here. And so, we immediately started having those conversations, and when I learned that she would actually be here this week, I immediately said, okay, I'm going to go that week as well. And so she's fully embraced it. I'm very thankful for that.
Right, so moving forward, what would you say your message is for person, particularly, of course, women, although there are some men who have been impacted by breast cancer as well. But what is your message to persons in terms of the importance of getting tested and not putting it off? Because as you mentioned, you had the same attitude. You did it basically because of your mother. What's your message?
Get tested. As cliche-ish as that may sound, get tested, because early detection truly saves lives. Don't put it off. If you have a history of it in your family, then you need to go as early as, age 30. Some doctors would say 30, and certainly don't wait past 35. If you don't have a history, like I didn't have a history, then age 40 was the target age for you to go and have a test. But either which way, you have to get tested. To live and not know is very detrimental to your health.
Mm-hmm. And the slogan for the foundation is?
Test, empower, live.
Okay.
Test, empower, live. You must get tested. When you're tested, you're empowered. And when you're empowered, you can live.
Absolutely. So we look forward to welcoming you back, and of course we would like to follow up with you. If there are persons who would like to learn more information about your foundation, how can they do that?
www.supportbreastcare.org.
Okay. Natalie Williams, Breast Care Foundation. It's a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And that's our program this week. Thank you for joining us. I am Joelle Cranston.
We're pleased that you joined us for this edition of SKNIS Perspectives. Join us every week at this same time on this radio station.
This program is produced by the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.